Welcome to the Legendary Upside podcast. My name is Pat Crane. You can follow all of my content at legendaryupside.com. With me today, Eric Froton of NBC. Froton, how's it going?
Good to see you as well. I'm sorry we're not in San Diego. I'm up here in New Hampshire for this. Otherwise, we're usually doing this on location right down the street. But I guess I'll have to grab you for softball some other Thursday, Pat.
Now, this is the fourth day in a row that it's rained in San Diego. Is that why you're not here?
Whoa. Well, yeah, I tend to have pretty good timing with my trips. 4 in a row. I know that.
4 in a row, man.
I saw on the
and
softball
it rains tomorrow.
Yeah. Our game has already been preemptively canceled for this evening. So I think we're in some trouble in that respect. That's all right. That's a temporary thing. By the time I get back in a week, it'll be perfect again. So
When I moved out here, when I moved out here and it would rain and everyone would be bummed out, I'd be like, come on, guys. Like, it's just it's beautiful, like soft rain. Like, but I got to tell you, I've gotten soft. I'm sick of this rain, man. Give me that San Diego sun.
Dude, imagine being back on the East Coast up here in New Hampshire, how you feel
I know.
about this weather. Trust me, I get it. I know.
I know I have no right to complain, but it is, I'm just telling you, I'm just being honest about my emotional state right now.
Well, dude, you've been there for what, a year and a half? You're still getting
No, it's
acclimated.
like 2.5 years now, I think.
It's 2.5 years now? It's been that long? Wow.
Let me think. No. You're right. It's a year and a half. I've lost track of time.
That's what I'm saying, Pat.
Yeah,
I know your time better than you do at this point.
You really do,
The
yeah.
San Diego thing. I'm proud of
that. I added a year somehow. All right, let's go ahead and dive into this rookie class. Last year we had you on. You told us Troy Franklin was Tyquan Thornton, which I didn't want to hear, but looking pretty good.
Now we have a Dante Thornton, who's basically the same type of guy that those two both are. So Ty Thornton, Dante Thornton, they're all here for you.
You told us Drake May was going to go to the Patriots in February, which I didn't want to hear either, but that's
right. We needed
this is exactly what happened. And Ladd McConkey, big flag plant guy for you, craftiness of the routes. That one was one that we were starting to come around on after the combine, but luckily you got me much higher on him and was kind of a big stand for us ultimately. But trying to get some of that magic again this year. I want to start. I was looking at our discussion last year. We barely talked about the running backs because it was a terrible running back class. This year it flips. Running back is now the strength of the fantasy class. It's honestly one of the strengths of the real life NFL draft. You know, one of these deep positions. Let's start at the top with Ashton Genty. I've seen some people poke a little bit of holes in his profile, specifically attacking the receiving. That maybe, he wasn't this great receiver, especially last year. He had like a 0.54 yards per route run last year. But for me, he was absolutely dominant on the ground and handled a ton of touches and was coming off a year in 2023 where he had over 3 yards per route run and was used very versatilely. I think at a certain point of touches, you're like, yeah, they didn't give him the ball in this way, but they'd already shown he could do it. Now they're loading him up as a runner, and he's turning in one of the most dominant seasons ever. Like, we know we can do it. They didn't use him like that. I guess it's a minor red flag that maybe, he might be like Dalvin Cook in the pros instead of the true 3-down archetype that we love for PPR, or the true pass catching, archetype. He'll probably be out there, but maybe he's not catching the ball as much as we'd like. Maybe he's more of a Zeke, than a McCaffrey, right? But I don't know. I think he could pretty easily be a McCaffrey. So what are your thoughts on Genty?
Yeah, I mean, the poking holes in his receiving acumen thing means you just didn't watch his 2023 tape, is all it means. I mean, he had 44 reception, 48 targets. He didn't have any drops. And like you said, 3.1 yards per reception, yards per route run. I mean, you're not going to get any better.
That's elite. Yeah.
3 yards per route run as a running back. Yeah. No one else in this class is even over 1.5. Dylan Sampson's the next best from the 23 class at 1.6 yards per route run from 2023. So it's literally a case of they've changed the offensive coordinators. In college, the offensive systems are obviously far less homogenous than they are in the pros, where if your pro usage is one way, it's probably going to be that way wherever you go, but not in college. You get a different OC come in, And I say, all right, that was a good time. We know you can catch the ball. You went out and had almost, I think, 500 yards receiving or whatever it might be. But you are a bell cow running back, and we are going to focus on getting you the ball when we have the blocking in front of you and everything's ready to go. So I think that's just the case with Genty, is that, all right, he only got 33 targets this year. We got 48 the year before, and he was getting them in myriad ways, more creatively, as opposed to just kind of the structured dump offs that he got this year. He did drop 3 passes, which, is not ideal, but look, it's just not what he did. They had him running the ball a lot more often, and he still went and racked up 151 broken tackles, which is just absurd.
Yeah, so I've just finished up my write-up on the top running backs. I'm going to publish it pretty similarly to when this podcast goes live. Friday morning is when I'm looking to get this article out. And I look at the PFF elusive rating formula, and I take out touches, which is normally what you divide by, and I divide by games instead to give these guys credit. Like, give me guys who are breaking a bunch of tackles, putting up a bunch of yards after contact per game, because that's what I care about for fantasy. He's got the highest mark in elusiveness per game that I have. The 5 FBS running backs directly behind him are Bijan Robinson, Todd Gurley, Jonathan Taylor, James Robinson, and Melvin Gordon. Pretty good to break a bunch of tackles and pick up a bunch of yards after contact.
James Robinson
over the course
was
of the game.
FCS.
Oops. Well, I got to take him out there.
No problem. Hey, that's all right.
But it was kind of a big hit, so we'll give him credit in the pod. The Genty profile, if you're going to pick another little tiny nit, would be that he's not huge, right? He's like 5'9", 211, and he just got used as a workhorse runner. But could he maybe be cast in a Jahmyr Gibbs role or something in the pros? Is that a potential downside, or is he? Because I don't believe this, but it's like I'm trying to see any ways that he isn't just like a 3-down star.
Sure, and I mean that's, you got to do your due diligence and ferret out all the different angles. I think it's a different thing. Obviously you mentioned he's 211 pounds, but at that 5'8" and 4/8, whatever it amounts to, 3/8, excuse me, he's extremely compact. And I actually had the opportunity to watch him play 3 times. I saw him in 2023 in the Mountain West Championship game against UNLV, and then a few weeks later against UCLA in the LA Bowl. And then last year, I got to see him again at UNLV for just a pretty incredible game on his part. I think he had 33 carries for a little over 130 yards, but it was just refusing to get tackled. And that's the thing. We're at 211 pounds. His contact balance, his overall grit, determination, and ability to get small when he needs to, when it's time to get in the hole, and then be able to break defenders down on the second level and get the big yardage gains. That's what we're really looking at. And he does all those things so incredibly, and he's quick, but it's the thickness. When you see him in person, you kind of realize, you're like, oh, okay, I get it now. Because just the arms, his trunk, the legs. At 5'8.5", he's extremely thick, but elusive and nimble, and the contact balance. He must have been a gymnast when he was young because of his ability. Him and Scatabo, I would say, has a similar ability to do this. Just churn his way through contact and just through pure guile and determination.
He can take contact too, though. You see like a guy fire into his leg, and it's like it didn't happen. Like he just bounces off him. It's kind of wild.
Absolutely. And that's it. That's a thick frame of his where he's still extremely fast. It sort of belies his size, the way that he can move, given how compact he is. It really does make him different.
He didn't test. Does that worry you at all?
Nah, I mean, all the top guys didn't test.
Yeah.
Tet didn't test. Shador didn't throw. Cam didn't throw. We've kind of become accustomed to that, where if you don't have anything to gain, well, why would you go out and do that? Similar with Tet, Drake London was the same way. he didn't test either because they're like, oh, he's probably going to run a 4.6 40, and it doesn't really matter because he's such a physical specimen. His ability to be aggressive and catch those quick hitches and just throw your face in the turf as a defender that doesn't have a time.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think if you watch Genty, you're like, this dude's fast enough. There's no concern that he's, he's got a top gear for sure. I don't know if it's a 4.41 top gear or 4.49 top gear, but I think it's somewhere in there, and I think it's fine.
I think it's under 4.5. Yeah,
I do
no
too.
matter what, I think it would be under that. Sure.
Yeah. All right. So I'm kind of sick of trying to poke holes. Where would you have him compared to some of the great running back prospects we've had in recent years, like a Bijan Robinson, going back to Barkley? Like, is he in that kind of tier for you?
Going back to Barkley, I mean, yeah, Barkley is the gold standard pretty much. I mean, his weight room exploits at Penn State are just the stuff of legend, and it doesn't take a genius to figure out that Saquon Barkley can run. But I would say I would put Bijan a cut above him simply because he's like 225. Okay. And Bijan's ability to cut at full speed at 225 pounds, ran the 4.38, 4.39. I forget it was sub 4.4. I mean, that's just outrageous testing numbers. And his ability, like I said, he's going laterally to the line, and then all of a sudden, boom, you just see him flash, and he's moving the complete opposite direction in one fluid motion. It just, to be able to do that at over 220 pounds, it was just so rare. And he did it at the highest level, for Texas. Mm-hmm. So you do have to kind of look at it with a little bit of an eyebrow raised of saying, okay, it still was Boise State that he was doing this at, even though, we had the opportunity to see him against Syracuse, had the opportunity to see him against UCLA and Oregon, and he was great against Oregon last year. I mean, they won the Big Ten. So, I mean, it's just sort of a minor knock, but yeah, I would have to go with Bijan and then put him right below that.
So he's in the tier, but you'd rather have Bijan as a prospect.
Yes, I would rather have Bijan as a prospect. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs is different. They're different style of players. He doesn't approach the game with the physicality that Bijan does, but he is outrageously fast, and his acceleration is one of a kind. Right. So, I mean, he's in that class of both of them, but I would put him, probably closer to Gibbs. I think Bijan's just a little bit of a cut above.
Okay. Let's go to Hampton, who's kind of emerging in his own tier a little bit, where it seems like he's maybe favored to go round one, or should be favored to go round one. Heading into the combine, hey, this guy could go round one buzz was starting to build, and then he turns in an awesome combine performance. So, you're looking at a guy as well. The NFL is just like not going to have any worries about how to use him. He's a big back, 221, downhill runner, 6 foot. Like he's built to carry the load. He carried the load at UNC. He doesn't necessarily pop as a receiver. Had a 1.06 career yards per route run. Ran a bunch of routes, 16 routes per game. That's pretty solid. Kind of the kind of guy with like a team asks him to be out there all the time. He should be totally capable, but not necessarily like a weapon in the receiving game. But he's someone that I think in best ball, people are maybe sleeping on the fact that he's very likely to go round one now, or very live to go round one, I should say. I've been targeting him pretty aggressively recently. Where are you at on Hampton?
Yeah, I mean, certainly you look at all the physical traits at the very least, as you mentioned, with his pretty impressive combine performance. So you're going to be over there around 4.4 as a guy who's, in the 220 pound range. And you've got my attention, especially 221, running a 4.46 and a pretty good 1.54 10-yard split too. All the testing numbers exactly what you want to see with Hampton. Yeah, I mean, the speed is there. I was lucky enough to see him 2 years ago at Clemson, where he had what is kind of a famous run now, and ended up getting chased down by Clemson cornerback. Who was the first round cornerback last year? I forget his name. Anyways, it'll come to me. who ran like a 4.28. He got chased down from behind for like the first time all year, and of course, the one guy who does it is running a sub 4.3 and is a first round selection as a cornerback. He's the only guy because he ran by the entire, like watching that all unfold sort of in front of my very eyes. You're like, man, how is this guy 220 pounds outrunning the entire defense until Wiggins comes from behind Nate Wiggins and pulls him down at the very, very goal line. But I mean, I've seen that speed in person, and it's real. With Hampton, I would almost like him to be a little bit more physical in finishing off his runs at times. Like he has pretty good feet. Obviously he's elusive. He had 4.5 yards after contact he's averaging, but at times he'll try to evade as opposed to put his shoulder down and really be authoritative. If a hole's there, he's fast enough. He's going to get through that. You're not going to be able to flag him down. And that's something that you're always concerned with 220 pound backs. But he also didn't, his vision, there weren't always a ton of holes to be able to run through there at North Carolina. He had to get kind of creative at times. I mean, Willie Lampkin was the best offensive lineman that they had. And he's 5'10". And he's a right guard. They were running off the right side a lot, off of Lampkin's side at right guard, because he's the one guy that can be like, all right, we know Lampkin can get a seal block. All right, we know we can get that out of him. When they're going around the edges, sometimes they can't. And frankly, the blocking of Nesbitt and Koppenhaver, their two tight ends. I watched those two tight ends blow more pull blocks, I swear to God, than any other set of tight ends in all of college football. I was going insane watching the Hampton stuff, being like, Nesbitt, anytime you're ready to crack down on a defensive end, just anytime. It wasn't happening. They were more move sort of a tight end. So that really did put him at a disadvantage. The offensive line he's dealing with too. He's running the ACC, which is sort of the nominal third, fourth power conference, but other than that, really kind of a nitpick of wanting to see a little more physicality when he would choose to go finesse and be avoidance as opposed to be dominance. That's the one real thing that I saw on his tape. But otherwise, I mean, it all makes sense. It's all there. I'm not sure if he goes first round.
Okay.
I have my doubts whether he ends up going in the first round. Because if you look at that back end of the first, like, what are the teams that really need him? Maybe you could argue, Kansas City. Maybe
I think it depends on where
Kareem Hunt. I mean, what do you see at the back end in from 24 plus?
It depends on Genty to some extent, because I don't know that it has to be 24 plus. Like, I think it could be, like the Broncos. The Broncos could take him at they're at 20. You could, like, if the Raiders were to take Genty, I wouldn't. Maybe the Cowboys have had a change of heart about how to value the running back position, but I wouldn't rule that out. You're hearing some teams have him over Genty stuff with Hampton, which I kind of don't believe and certainly don't agree with, but it's just like the type of buzz where I feel like, maybe he doesn't go first round, but the idea of him falling outside the top 50 now looks very implausible. And he's going to land, like, if he lands with the Bears in the second round, like, that's just as good to me as like a late first round pick. Like, I'm just as excited. So it's more about the first round buzz, the potential for that to happen kind of brings the floor up with it too. And you start to think about, like, so the next tier of guys I'd say are all locks for day 2, but not necessarily, especially when you talk about Caleb Johnson, locks for round 2, where I think Hampton now looks like very clearly a lock for round 2. But Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, and Caleb Johnson, I think kind of form maybe not like I think there's some distance between them a little bit, but they're a tier, if you want to call it that, of guys who are locks for day 2 of the draft, probably aren't going to go round 1, although Henderson maybe has an outside chance there. But what are your thoughts on that group? Anyone kind of jump out positively or negatively for you?
Yeah, well, you got to start with the Ohio State duo there with Henderson and Judkins. I mean, Judkins tested really, really well at the combine. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I didn't see it coming. He weighed in at 221. I didn't see a 4.48 coming at 221 with a 1.51 10-yard split. That is blazing. Second fastest in the class on a 10-yard split for a running back that was not particularly explosive this year. Like the guy that I sort of comp his performance to from last season was more Blake Corum in that the yards after contact, he's as low as anybody in the class, frankly. He's a 3.1 yak. You want to be up there as close to 4 or over 4, obviously, if possible, when it comes to yards after contact for collegiate running backs. And you look at what he did, and he's ripping off the 6 to 9 yard runs. Like he's doing a good job of making himself skinny in the hole, running instinctively. He's tough, and he's obviously running behind an Ohio State offensive line that was pretty exceptional. But the bottom line is when it came time to beating those second level defenders and extending those plays, I didn't see the 4.48 on tape.
He had an 11-foot broad jump as well. 11-foot broad jump is like elite.
Outrageous. You led the class. Number one in the class in broad jump too. So, I mean, you're looking at the overall athletic profile, and it's just incredible. You just wonder where it's like, all right, he had pretty good blocking in front of him at Ohio State's offensive line. He's used on early downs pretty often. Why not more of the missed tackles and the yards after contact, which you have to make the first guy miss in the NFL. It just has to happen. There's always going to be somebody bearing down on you. So the fact that he didn't do it as well as you'd like to, that's the one thing I'd look at and be like, all right, well, what is that accounted for? How is that the case? And that's the thing was, you could say, fine, all right, he was at Ohio State and they were splitting, but look at the year before at Ole Miss. He had 3.2 yards after contact. And that was in Lane Kiffin's system that does a pretty good job in terms of the RPO, a lot of RPO type stuff. So if you're getting the ball, typically you're running up against a lighter box. It's an advantageous number situation. So as opposed to just getting the handoff and running in the line. So that's the thing that I really look at and say, why are you not breaking contact more often? That's the one thing I sit there and have with Judkins. Why are you breakaway yards and yards after contact? But then with Travion, I mean, God, coming pre-combine, use my RB2. I mean, I understand that obviously Hampton has solidified himself pretty well. Man, Travion, his explosiveness. Once he decides where he wants to go, once he goes and decides to hit the accelerator button, there's no one in the class who can move like that. There's no one in the class that can go from 0 to 60 in a flash. The way
I thought he was going to be sub 4.4. I was surprised by the 40 time. I thought he'd be.
And 4.43 still.
It's good,
great.
But he was 202.
He was 202 when he came in at. He was billed at 210 his entire college career. Which is interesting. And, he looks like he's a 205 to 208 type guy, but the 202 that he weighed in at was definitely like, oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay. Better be like faster than we hope,
It's got to be fast. It's got to be lightning.
And he wasn't quite lightning, but I mean, you watch him play and I completely agree. It's like, man, this guy really has like on-field burst, maybe he didn't run the 40 we wanted, but I still think he's very, very explosive. He had a 10-foot, 8-inch broad jump, a 38.5-inch vertical. Those are elite marks as well. So, I do worry about like the comps that popped up for me statistically were like pretty concerning. Ronald Jones was a close one. Now he's a better pass catcher. He's more reliable, much more consistent runner, but Jones was 205 when he came in, went 38th overall. So it's like there's some similarities. Amir Abdullah came up as a comp. Duke Johnson, Tevin Coleman. J.K. Dobbins came in. That's a better one. But his top one was Devon Achane, who was only 188 pounds, and then had to put on weight. So I think the bull case is like Achane, but he doesn't have to gain weight, which would be pretty fun. So he feels like kind of situation dependent to me. Like I really want him to land with a coaching staff who's not worried about the weight and is just and is excited about his ability to be a playmaker in space and is going to utilize him in the passing game. I think he's got a really high ceiling if he lands in a situation like that. I also think the floor, especially early in his career, is like a little shakier than like certainly than a Hampton, where Hampton, I don't care. Like pretty much every coaching staff in the league knows exactly how to use Hampton.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very, very salient point. If you can't figure out how to use 5'11", 221 that's running a 4.46, right? What's going on here? But it's absolutely true. Being what I was hoping for with a 210 and getting a 202 and 4.43 still great, but like you're saying, it's not elite. And he broke 33 tackles last year. I mean, when he breaks the tackles, he makes them impactful. He had he was second in the class when it comes to yards after contact. But at the same time, his vision, if there's anything that you hear him kind of get hit on, sometimes it's the vision. He's not great between the tackles. He got a little better this year. Going through his tape, there was a couple in one particular run against Iowa that I watched where he just seamlessly weaved his way through. You didn't even see the hole, but he managed to get through it, and he's just agile and quick enough to be able to exploit it. But that wasn't game in, game out. So I do think that a little bit of getting used to the flow and just getting comfortable, you might take a year.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. Caleb Johnson's been kind of a faller since the combine, 4.57 40, which is like normally fine at 224, but in this class, it's kind of concerning. 10-yard split of 1.62, which is kind of bad.
It was as bad as it was the lowest in the class. I want to say it wasn't just bad; it was pretty incredibly bad. It was notably bad. Yeah,
notably bad. And he also then doesn't jump. So I think with one of the, if a guy's like in the 4.5s and he's like 125-inch broad jump, 37-inch vertical, I'm like he's got burst, but he doesn't jump, which makes you worried. Makes you worried about the burst trends. And the thing about Johnson, the more I dug into him, I'm like, hang on. This guy was like kind of an inconsistent boom bust runner, at least like looking at like success rate. He didn't have a very good success rate in any of his 3 seasons. And he doesn't catch passes. So he wasn't used a lot in the passing game. He didn't have good receiving efficiency. So he's dependent on. So I'm like, okay, so it's like kind of the profile's starting to look a lot like Rashad Penny, like a big breakaway runner. But then he's boom bust, and we now have questions about the burst. So I'm getting a little nervous on Caleb Johnson. Where are you at on him?
I'm getting a little nervous about my buddy's dog barking all over the place here. Kobe. Kobe, how do you feel about Caleb Johnson, buddy? Come here.
He went nuts on Caleb Johnson.
Come here. Let's talk about Caleb Johnson. There's nothing at the window. Yeah, absolutely. And when you watch him at Iowa, he's tough. He keeps his legs churning.
Yeah.
And the offensive line there at Iowa was really good. Like you're watching his stuff and you're like, oh, he's got some nice creases to be able to go through. Rarely blow blocks over there. And that was really kind of the foundation of their offense was, the power run game with Caleb Johnson. One cut style. He takes a little time to ramp up. He's not going to be doing the stop stuff. He wants to keep his legs moving and churning so that he can use a pretty effective stiff arm. But he's physical. And that's sort of a lot of the appeal for it. And when he gets through the line, it's like, all right, well, he can extend those plays and he can get through the second level. But
he doesn't look fun to bring down. Like
no.
He's not as big as Derrick Henry, but there's that element of like the freight train thing of like once he's up to speed, like it's not fun. He was a very efficient kick returner. Like if you get this guy to full speed, even if it's not 4.4, it's still 224. It can be a problem for defenders.
Sure. I mean, the 4.57 wasn't exactly what we were looking for, without a doubt. In fact, his line was, I want to say 4.49 is what we got an opening for that. And let's just say I took the over on Caleb Johnson's 4.49 40 line and profited nicely over there at Prize Picks for it. But in fact, there was some great lines this year. They had Ollie Gordon at 4.51.
Oh
he
man,
went 4.6. He went 4.62. So yeah, there's some
Whew.
pretty great stuff. Just remember, when it comes time to next year around the combine, there's always value, and put a little money in your pocket. But that being said, with Johnson, it's the one cut style, but he's not going to be. Jeez, Obi. I know. He's very, very animated about Caleb Johnson. But yeah, absolutely. The testing is reason for concern, without a doubt.
Okay.
Without a doubt. So, because he's not nimble, he's powerful, but how does that play against NFL competition?
Right. So let me ask you about the group of running backs behind that, because there's so many of these guys. And I want to talk to you about the other positions before we run out of time. So let me just kind of throw the big group of running backs that's behind it. And the way best ball drafts are going right now is like, I think that Johnson should be kind of at the 7-8 turn, but he's kind of working his way down there. But then there's a huge gap down to like Scatabo. Bashal Tootin has made a big rise after his combine performance.
Tootin running the 4.32.
Yeah, man.
At 2.05. Not bad.
Yeah.
I was a little surprised by that. We talked pre-combine. I was like, come on, Bashal Tootin. Like,
so
really are you small? But yeah, I get it.
It's Dylan Sampson, RJ Harvey, Devin Neal, DJ Giddens, Damian Martinez, I would say, are kind of like a big tier. Maybe Ollie Gordon you could throw in there. Brashard Smith you could maybe throw in that general tier. Like, what thoughts on that pretty large tier of guys where it feels like a boom bust group, but there should be some hits in there?
Yeah, I have the group of Neal, RJ Harvey. He had a great combine. I love the way he runs, his play style. Damian Martinez, DJ.
He's 205 too. He's not that small.
No, not that small. You didn't know what you're going to get out of Harvey, because he's coming out of UCF. Malzahn, the way he runs his running backs, he's going to be a focal point in the offense, and he has this, like, he's got a little bit of like this wiggle to his run game, the way he runs. He's always kind of keeping you guessing where he's going.
Yeah.
So like I like that, because he's constantly breaking down defenders when he's getting one-on-ones with them, and it allows him to really keep his cards close to the vest until it's time to finally break down. Which way you doing? Which way you going? Okay, I'm going this way. So like
he's got burst.
He's got subtleness,
acceleration.
Hell yes. But like, I didn't realize he had 4.4 flat burst. I didn't realize we were living in that world, and we are, which is incredible. And like you said, he went with a 38 in terms of 38-inch vertical too. So he's proven himself to be up to par athletically. I think he's probably my favorite, most underrated running back. Devin Neal, though, he bigger than we expected in the 220-pound range. I didn't think we were getting that out of Devin Neal. He was 213. He was 220 at the
Senior Bowl, and then he dropped weight for the combine.
And then he dropped weight. He's like, I got to be able to test as well as I possibly can.
You're not going to like what I run at 220. So
he's like,
I'll be 213.
Like, he ran a 4.58 anyways.
Which is fine for him. I was worried about 4.6s. Yeah. 4.58, I'll take it.
It was a concern. And the 37.5 vertical. All right. This is
great.
This is good. That's what we're looking at. But, with his ability to, it's not so much the big sweeping runs outside. It's attacking angles, and it's attacking.
Yeah.
He's savvy about the way he goes about things. He makes up for his lack of athleticism with creating good angles and being like, his vision's good. He's patient, using pace steps when he's going to get up to the line. And he seems like he lets things develop pretty well. He has a comfort.
He's one of those runners where like he has like sort of the ability to like make the defenders match his speed. We're like, we're all going to be cool here. Like, I'm not going to go that fast, but you're not going to go that fast. And we're all, we're going to flow down the field together. I find him very aesthetically pleasing to watch. He rose a bunch before the combine and is now fallen a bit, which I think is probably warranted, especially because he's never been like a lock to go round 3, or I really haven't heard like I think he's a round 2 prospect from from the the evaluator camp. So we're probably talking about hopefully like an early round 4 guy, which has a low floor inherently. Could end up being a backup this year, that kind of thing. But I do like him as much. I don't want to get carried away for the the reasons of the floor, but I do have hope that Neal could really be something if given an opportunity.
Yeah, there's appeal there. Especially at the size at 213 to 220. It's like I didn't expect him to be in that range. I expect him closer to 210. I did expect that with Damian Martinez, though, in terms of his size, 217, right on the button, right where we're looking for. But gosh, 4.51 was a great time.
Yeah.
For his size at the 220 and his style of play, because he's pretty physical. Like I almost I look at him and his feet and his ability to make people miss in the hole.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of reminds me of Ramondre Stevenson, and that
okay,
he's a bigger guy. He's a wide body type back, but still is very fleet and light on his feet when it was time to kind of make decisive moves and be able to lower the boom too. Because the question I had with Martinez, when you look at him on tape, it is his ability to get through the line. It's almost like a Braylon Allen sort of a skill set. Where I'm looking at him going, yeah, he's physical, but is he going to be able to get past the line, without interior defensive players peeling off from their blocks and be able to grab him, as they're sort of coming through the hole. I wonder if he had that burst at 4.51. That's no problem there.
Yeah.
At 217, I wasn't expecting that. I was kind of hoping that we'd get, I think he was probably looking for mid 4.5s. And he went 4.51, which frankly answers a little bit of the questions about his pop getting through the hole. That initial burst through the hole is all I'm really concerned about, because I know that he has the lower body elusiveness and feet to be able to get himself out of trouble when he runs himself into it.
Yeah, I dream about him as like, let's get him day 3 to the Vikings as the early down compliment to Aaron Jones now. Like that's kind of where I'm like, man, he would be really fun. Let's, the Bears bring him in as, they pass in the second round on running back, and they're like, we'll get Damian Martinez later. He'll be our early down hammer, their David Montgomery kind of thing. He's pretty. I think he's kind of limited to more the big back role, especially early on. But
I think he is. Yeah.
Like at the price, who cares? That can generate some value for us, and I think he can contribute that way immediately.
Especially with the Vikings, they're short on picks right now.
They are.
So a little. You see multiple mock drafts with them trading down from there, I believe 24 pick, and saying, all right, well, we're happy to slide down a little bit and grab an extra third.
Yep.
Bump down the second round and get a couple thirds, the fourth, and be able to kind of cobble together some of these supporting cast players like you're talking about with Martinez, who they resigned to Aaron Jones. He's 205. He would be the perfect, bull to be able to drag people along, which is his style. You've seen some of his best runs where he makes a move, guys are hanging off of him, and he's pulling them for another 5 yards. So I do think that there's certainly something to be said for that. And, there's someone else out of that class that I was surprised by. I think really moved himself into that tier 3. It's DJ Giddens from Kansas State, who, on film and during watching him during his collegiate career, you notice that his shoulders aren't the broad, rocked up, thick shoulders that you kind of would like to see for your every down running back. But gosh, Giddens, he weighed in at 212. He's 6 feet tall. So the pad level is going to be a concern there without a doubt. But he came in at 212, which I don't know if I really saw that. I thought he may be in the 205 range.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Is awesome for him. And the fact that he ran a 4.43 with a 1.53 split, jumped 40 inches on his vert, almost an 11 foot broad. All those testing numbers are exceptional. And then you look at the fact that, he played at Kansas State and was elusive
Yeah, he's
tough
very
to bring
elusive.
up, tough to square up is what it is. He isn't really, you're not going to see him really lower in the shoulder particularly often, but in terms of his ability to slip tackles and get skinny, he's real good at that. The one knock he had last year, he was used more prolifically in the passing game. For the average 1.3 yards per route, caught he caught 30 of his 40 targets in 2023, but last year only caught 20 of 32 at 5 drops, which paces the entire class. Him and Jordan James at 5 drops. That's a real concern because his receiving acumen was a bonus for him last year. He made some big plays out there and just getting dump offs in the flat where they're like, hey, we need you to go make a play. Everything else is kind of is bottled up. And he made some incredible plays. And he extended that. I think he did more this year as a runner. He improved. But you want to have somebody who's 6 feet, 212 pounds, and has that sort of a profile and that speed and fluidity to the way he runs to be able to manipulate second level defenders. You need to be able to have him do that. If he's dropping passes like that, if he can shore that up, it's going to certainly help his profile. But not great.
Yeah, but he can make plays. 1.24 career yards per route run is one of the better marks in the class. Not a great pass catching running back class, but he ran 14 routes per game over his career and was efficient over the course of his career. But yeah, his yards per route run is good. His career receptions per game not so good, which would point to the kind of the inconsistency there that you're highlighting. Bashal Tutin a little bit similar in the passing game, 1.27 yards per route run on 15 routes per game. And then Cam Scatabo is kind of like, I mean, he's a big guy, but in some ways the kind of passing down back in this class, 1.57 career yards per route run, averaged 18 routes per game, 2.4 receptions per game. Some of my hope for him is that, okay, maybe he is in the 4.6s. Frankly, I would have liked him to run just to know that he's not any slower than that. But you do have some concerns about, the burst and the speed, the long speed translating to the NFL. But, he is a pretty versatile playmaker and someone that could be like a big receiving down back, I think. But he's a little polarizing. Where are you at on Scatabo and Tutin, especially when you look at the receiving versatility?
Yeah, Scatabo, just coming from Sacramento State, transferring in Arizona State 2 years ago, was a star at the FCS level for Troy Taylor, who went over to become the head coach of Stanford. It's all about contact balance with Scatabo. He's slower than Tachin, but has that similar skill set. And that,
that's a safe bet. The two guys who haven't tested, I would take Genty over Scatabo in the 40.
Yeah, he's just a little quicker, right? But hey, he did the jumping drills and he jumped 40. He had a 40-inch vert.
Yeah,
so you got to give that.
That's true. You do have to give that to him.
Big, thick legs at 220 pounds at 5'9". So he just has that almost, I guess, Damian Pierce sort of proportions with the thickness.
Okay.
That he possesses and the contact balance. But broke 102 tackles, 4.1 yards after contact. As you talked about, he's, I think, the best receiving back in the class in terms of what he was able to do once he gets that ball in his hands. It was impressive. Look no further than the Texas game for that and how he's just dragging SEC caliber defenders all over the field and just a whirling dervish, of a tornado when he gets the ball and he's just spinning and churning and the hands on the ground and he's just somehow manages to stay up. I think there is, a real credible question about how do you translate this? A 4.6 plus 40 time, the agility scores probably weren't going to be particularly great. In terms of just the side to side, who knows? He's a good athlete. But how does this whole package translate to the NFL? What is his role? I mean, I'm curious to see how that materializes given his relative lack of speed, but his fleet footwork and his contact balance and his physicality. it's a real. He is kind of. It's hard to comp him out, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, so some comps that came up for me, Devontae Booker, not a particularly bullish comp, but you're like, yeah, big back, kind of some versatility. Jay Ajayi came up.
Jay Ajayi, Boise State's Jay Ajayi, yeah.
Another very elusive back.
No, but he had knee problems. That's the
he was bone on bone entering the league, which maybe that's Scadapoo's problem. We don't know. Yeah. TJ Yeldon came up. These aren't Jay Ajayi is a pretty fun comp actually. Rashad White came up as a guy who he's very much more athletic in the time stuff, but kind of plays slow. And then Zach Charbonnet, another one, which kind of feels bullish to me.
Charbonnet is a better athlete. I mean, defined a better athlete than Scadapoo when it comes to
most are
carrying the ball, making people miss in the hole too. He's just a different level. But okay, I get it given size comparisons.
Yep. So Tootin and Sampson, and let me ask you about them. They're both kind of undersized, but got some burst. They're going around like the 140s, 150s in best ball. I've been taking both.
Sampson and Toots. Sampson comes in lighter than Tootin at 200 as opposed to the 206. And the thing that really knocks him is he didn't run the 40. You come in at 200 pounds.
I think it was a hamstring thing.
He tweaked his hamstring. Well, he did a vert, 35-inch vert.
Yeah.
Broad was just average with a 10.4. There's just, nothing really to particularly be interested in. But dude, that's his thing.
Right.
That's what Sampson does star well is he's a track star. Plus just his ability to hit that hole. If that opens up, he presses the gas and he can get through there. Even though there's a small crease, he can find a way to get through it. So that's really his core competency. He's not breaking tackles. He's fairly elusive for his size. I don't mean to say that. And frankly, for 200 pounds, he's more physical than I think you kind of expect.
He can run up the middle, I think. He's not just
he did a lot of up the middle stuff. And that's frankly where he popped most of his stuff. It was A-gap runs. It wasn't like he was taking pitches to the outside, but it was feeling his way through and just exploding through what's available. But there's concerns about his fumbling. He had 4 fumbles, he had a couple drops. I would have liked to have seen him run. It's almost like Tootin kind of stole a little bit of the thunder because he ran so well. I mean, the 4.32, best in the class. Everything in terms of ramping up, being athletic. It's Tootin really, 1.49. Again, best in the class on a 10-yard split. And he crushed everybody in that. Next closest was Judkins, 1.51. He was the only one under 1.5 for that. The shuttle wasn't great, but again, 40.5-inch vertical. So he tested out, and at 206 was kind of like, I was worried about him maybe being under 200 pounds. He ran at 206, he ran a 4.32. So at 210, if he needs to put on another 5, he'll be able to handle that. He'll be able to deal with it. And he was elusive. I mean, you can't
workhorse running back, played on special teams. It's
4.5 yards after contact. He isn't going to grind out yards for you. He doesn't. I feel like, in terms of the interior, Sampson's a better interior runner. Yeah, at least I feel good about it. And Tootin isn't going to dance much either. He's kind of a one-cut style, plant his foot in the ground and then find it. When he sees it, he goes. So he'll use pace steps pretty effectively to let things develop. Like he's following the flow of his line. And then trying to use those cutback lanes pretty effectively. And he does it. He does it pretty damn well. And he's as fast as you're going to get. I think you could see him slip into, the back end of day 2. But he's probably, I would say his floor is round 4 at this point. Because if you throw him with a pounder, God, you could see him being pretty effective in that role.
I'm excited about him as one of these round 4, early round 4, kind of works into a role over the course of the season, kind of backs with explosiveness. And that's a good bet where he's still going. I was looking at Dylan Sampson's pro day was actually yesterday, the day before. 24/7 Go Vols 24/7 has him saying they were told his 40 time at his pro day was between 4.46 and 4.49. So not what we wanted
200
for
pounds, and yeah, I mean that's fine. It's above what his line was. I'll say that. You know, he was in the low 4.4s for his,
and he's a speed
time.
back. He was kind of held up as one of the speed backs in this class. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're in the high 4.4s when Judkins is running that, you know, Hampton's running that, not ideal for your profile, especially when you got Tootin, who you've pretty much been direct compared to when he's running a 4.32 with a 1.49.
Let me ask about Jordan James, who's one of the guys who bombed the combine, but was not expected to be particularly fast. And he's an interesting guy for me because people really like the way he runs. Like I know, like Todd McShay was really into him. And then you look at his success rate; he's got an awesome success rate. His breakaway percentage and breakaway yards were horrible. And so you have this guy, he comps to like Tyrion Davis Price, you know, but he also comps to Devonta Freeman as one of these, like, you know, undersized. Like there's a range here of like, you're not big, but you hit the right hole every time. And then that's it. The run's basically over, you know, but you do it so consistently that maybe a coaching staff feeds you, or maybe they're like, we would really like the ability for more than a 4-yard run, so we're just never going to play this guy. So, you know, I still have like, I'm still leaving the light on for him as like a, you know, 20th round dart throw in best ball. But what were your thoughts on him as a runner?
Yeah, I actually I interviewed him at the combine because I just had to know. I'm like, what are you thinking? Right? Because he's at Oregon. He waits his turn 2 years behind Bucky and even Noah Whittington. And then this year comes, it's his turn. As a junior, his third year. So he still had, you know, probably had 2 years of eligibility left. I'm not sure how year one worked out, but it's like he was a true freshman. He probably red shirt there and be able to get as much time as he wants. He could have come back to school easily, and he was at Oregon. And that Phil Knight Nike money ain't going anywhere. They would have loved to throw a bag at him to keep him around for several $100,000 a year, which is more than we'd be making in the NFL. He could have stayed there for another 2 years and had a biblical Oregon career. Instead, 3 years and out. As soon as his eligibility is up, he hits the road. But at 205, he runs a 4.55, slow, decidedly slow for 4.55 with a 1.62 split. Now, we talked about the split of Caleb Johnson at 1.62, where he's 220.
He's got 20 pounds on him.
He's got 20 pounds on him. He's 225. You're 205 here, Jordan James. You're running a 1.62. You're coming out, you know, after your third year. And next year, it'd be a much more beneficial class for him. You know, this is a really
deep
tough
class.
running back class.
Yeah.
Deep class. He run that, you know, his broad was low. He didn't do much on the broad. I think like a sub 10 broad. So
didn't do the vertical, which is not a good sign for what that would have been.
Didn't do the vert.
He did the broad and said, I'm good on the vert.
5 drops last year, you know, as well. Yeah. And it's like 3.2 yards after contact. And all these things start coming together. And it's like, I liked watching James for Oregon. You know, he had a great line in front of him. Josh Connolly will be a first-round pick at left tackle. He was just fine. But the fact that he wasn't able to do more, wasn't able to create more explosive runs, and had trouble in terms of testing and the drops, like I can't help but look and say that he's at the back end of my 4th tier.
Okay, that's totally fair. I just the ability to kind of consistently hit the hole and the ability for that to get you on the field. I'm like, let me make sure that he's, you know, that the teams are really out on him, because, you know, I compare him to Freeman, which obviously is a super bullish comp for the NFL result, but he had a 4.58 at 206 with a 32-inch vert and 118-inch broad. So, you know, and was not a good breakaway runner, but was very consistent. So that's like where I'm still willing to, if you're going to make him free, I'm still willing to mix him in. But there's just so many guys that you can make a thin bull case for in this class, where my main takeaway is, let's mix this up. Let's take a Bashard Smith. Let's take, I take some Kalel Mullings. I take some LaQuint Allen. Like any of these other kind of dart throw guys, just to close out running back that you're intrigued by.
Yeah, I actually am intrigued by Taj Brooks for
Oh,
Texas Tech.
he was a little bit more athletic than people were thinking.
Yeah, I was extremely surprised by what he put out there on tape because he weighed in at 214, which is nice. Hey, great. 214, 5'9". All right, no problem with that. But runs a 4.52 at that. His line was 4.57. I was looking over on that. He went under by a half a 500ths. And then his 3-cone and shuttle were superb. Not just good, great. A sub 7-second 3-cone, led the entire class with a 4.06 shuttle. Like, I'm talking crushed the rest of the class. Nobody even came close to 4. Everyone else is in the 4.2s. He smoked the shuttle run and showed 35-inch vertical. Like, if you're at 35 plus, that's great. All those things. I mean, a lot better than what I frankly expected. He wasn't asked to catch the ball much, if hardly at all in that offense. But when he did, he caught 28 out of 34. He wasn't quite as explosive this year as he was last year. I mean, in 2023, he was pretty awesome, and they rode him hard and put him away wet. Like, he was out there for I think he led the nation in carries, or at least the Power 4 in carries that year. So, I mean, not bad in terms of his production and his ability to sort of navigate the interior. But the testing just shows, like, all right, maybe there's a little more there than we originally thought, which is pretty exciting.
Do you think he could end up going a little higher in the draft than people were thinking? And I'm still thinking day 3, but maybe more in that round 4, round 5 mix.
He's definitely a day 3 running back. I would think maybe closer to round 5 than he was round 6, 7 now. I think the teams would be able to look at it and say, all right, well, there's some athletic bona fides to back up what we see on tape a little bit. And I think that could be intriguing. I also like, I can't help but I know he tested like crap, but God, Ollie Gordon, if he could get it together, his 2023, it's almost like,
yeah.
I don't want to use a jersey comp because it's the same college, but Chuba Hubbard,
yeah,
he led the nation. He had 2,000 yards rushing his junior year. Comes back for senior year, is banged up, and it just totally deflates his value. Now he's a starting running back. He's carving himself out that niche. I think you could see with Gordon, I know his 4.61 40 was brutal, but he's 6'1", 226 pounds. Like, he's verified big and tall. It's just when he gets those long legs going, he's tough. He will throw the stiff arm right in your face and put you in the ground. And he's got pretty fluid hips considering his size. So, sure, you can be able to square him up. Yeah. Do I think he was a little banged up? I've heard that he was a little impaired this season. Maybe he gets healthy and he can be more effective. But gosh, even the previous year, he caught 39 passes in 2023. So, like, he was out there. He was getting used in all different facets of the game. I mean, I know that he's a little slower. I know he didn't have quite the burst or the sexy season that you want to see, but man, end of the draft, 5th, 6th round, somebody takes Ollie Gordon. I can't help but still wanting to see where that landing spot is and maybe kicking him around in the 4th, 5th round of rookie drafts.
Yeah, he was going in best ball drafts like pretty high, like in the 150s, 60s, I want to say, to start. And
that's pretty high.
Yeah, he's now fallen more close to the 180s, and it's getting to a point where I'm like willing to mix him in now. But he was a pretty big fade for me because I like, did people not see what happened this past year? But
wasn't good.
Yeah, I'm down to take flyers on him, and he's kind of in the flyer range. So someone that in best ball, it's always nice to like completely fade at a terrible price that's too high, and then have the guy fall. Then you're like, great, I'll just load up for much cheaper than my competition. And he's getting to that point where Not necessarily ready to load up, but I'm definitely ready to start taking him.
Yeah, I don't blame him at all. If I had to go with one more too, I like Jarquez Hunter, Auburn. He's got to be able to be had for like next to nothing. I would
he's
think
very,
he's not
very cheap.
a real priority. Yeah, I would say
I'm just worried about the draft
well
capital for him. I haven't heard anything like, oh, he's going to be, a priority in day 3 for someone. Like he's like UDFA risk there, I think. Is that fair?
Yeah, well, interesting. Yeah, I think so. God, he didn't have the big vert, but man, he ran 4.44, which I was pretty happy with for Hunter. SEC running back was the Auburn guy for a few years. It wasn't like 1 year; like he stuck around. They stuck with him. 140 elusiveness rating, 4.1 yards after contact. Caught 21 of 27 passes this past season. I feel like when I'd watch Hunter, I just liked him. I know he's not sexy. He's not great. He's not going to be able to be popping anybody's, super excited list. But I feel like for the cost of acquisition, he's a pretty good value for next to nothing, essentially. And
yeah, he's completely free.
End of the 5th round in rookie drafts.
Yeah, I think at best ball, I'm probably going to wait for after the draft to really start mixing him in. But I like the call to keep him on the radar. We don't have much time left, but I want to ask you about the wide receivers. And so one of the things with Tet McMillan that I've heard, he's not in the biggest program. Now he's a big recruit, but ends up
top 10
wide
receiver.
But, the level of competition is not what you get from a typical wide receiver who's in the mix to go top 10 in the NFL draft. You're like predicting this stuff week to week. And so I wanted to get your sense of, is Tet just kind of a level of competition guy? Is he just feasting on bad defenses, or was he able to actually be reliable, predictably productive when the competition stepped up? Because obviously big level of competition increase coming for him in the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing he has going for him, he measured in just over 6'4", 219, which isn't too big. You don't want to be up in that plus 6'5" range or so in the team next territory. So like just over 6'4", all right, that's fine. If there's, what he hangs his hat on is he accelerates really well for 6'4". Like snapping off his brakes and powering out of them, sinking his hips. He does it extremely well. Hands are really smooth, doesn't rely on his body. You're not going to have a Quentin Johnson situation like that with the alligator arms going up and trying to corral the ball.
Yeah.
He lines up in the slot sometimes too. He can be very effective as a big slot Jawan Jennings style. So he has that, versatility. He isn't quite as that Drake London when it comes to dominating, being as physical and being a straight up bully in the way that London is, that you look at it and say, all right, that is just throw him the hitch and let him go and run for that 8 yards because it's so tough to deal with him. He does have a tendency to try to make, when the ball's just slightly extended outside of his reach or right at the edge of his reach, he'll have a tendency to reach up with one hand and try to one-hand it. It just doesn't work. Hardly ever. I've only seen him catch it one time. I think he was out of bounds when he went up for the one-handed catch. So he has to stop that tendency. I just can't stand it when I'm watching that. But I do feel like his ability to force missed tackles too. 29 missed tackles and 87 receptions. Obi, come on, buddy. Obi's feeling it here today. That's what happens when you're on
when you get cooking. He gets off.
He's excited about Tetero McMillan too. But so he definitely has the physicality to do that. It's just not quite the same straight up bully ball profile you get out of London. But he moves better. He's a little more fluid than he is there. So I feel pretty good about him being successful. He wins in more ways than I think you got caught last year a little bit with the Marvin Harrison stuff, where he was primarily that downfield type threat, didn't have a full route tree. I feel like he can do more things than you saw from Marvin Harrison, which kind of caused him to get caught up a little bit. We'll see. I still think he'll be fine this year.
I'm still pretty hopeful on Harrison, but
but that profile in terms of the adjustment, I feel like he's a different type of thing.
Thoughts on, so the second tier is kind of like Luther Burden, Emeka Egbuka, and Matthew Golden. Any thoughts on those guys?
Yeah, you got to give it to Golden. I mean, running the 4.29 at 200 pounds. It's like, man, that's pretty damn good. That's what we're looking for there out of him. And he just, during the course, he went to Houston to start, goes over to Texas, and gradually as the season went along, is it going to be Isaiah Bond? Jonte Cook got some shine, and man, it was Matthew Golden. Did he ever live up to his promise? And as the season went on, he got better and better, and just his hands, he made some incredible outside his frame catches that in big spots for Texas. And Quinn Ewers wasn't at his best. He had an oblique injury, he tore an oblique, and he was just battling that all season. So he had to make up for a lot of sort of lacking quarterback play, I would say, at times. He's pretty damn good. With Burden, it's that short area, almost manufactured touch where get it to him and let him create almost like an extended handoff. He didn't have a full route tree that we'd really see out of him. Made some great catches downfield, made some plays on the ball and everything, but the full toolkit you wouldn't really get to see out of Burden as much. He was a little bit limited with having Connor Cook there as his quarterback. But with Egbuka, I feel like in terms of how projectable and how his skill set will translate to the next level, I think he's a pretty safe evaluation.
He feels safe, right?
In my opinion.
Maybe he's a slot, but he's gonna be able to get open.
He's 6'1", 205 as a slot, and he's fluid, and he knows how to set up his breaks. He uses his leverage well, and is physical enough where he's pressing up against the guy and boom, knows when to snap it off and be ready to get the ball. He can do it. He's just a more polished, all-around, complete receiver. You can ding him for being in the slot most of the time there in Ohio State, but he had Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith and Marvin Harrison on the outsides. He's playing, he's doing what is required of him. Return kicks, is an incredible kick returner too. We see his athleticism really shine out there. I think he's going to be a great wide receiver too in a potent offense. I think in terms of safety, he's safer than the other two, in my opinion, with the other two having higher upside. I would even say that Burden has higher upside than Golden because of his ability to make people miss.
Yeah.
But we haven't seen him do it downfield the same way that we've seen out of Golden. So like that Luther Burden, he's the number one recruit out of his class, number one wide receiver recruit, stayed in Missouri, stayed in the home state. I mean, just seeing him put it all together, it's there, but he's maybe the one that I have the most concerns about out of that second tier.
The floor feels legitimately concerning, but I'm trying not to lose sight of the fact that he is still has a very high ceiling, and mixing him in. So let me ask you about some of the later guys. Trey Harris is fallen quite a bit. He was originally when his best ball drafts open, kind of going ahead of Matthew Golden. He's now fallen back. He's not full dart throw, but premium dart throw. Jaden Higgins, premium dart throw after a nice combine. Jalen Noel has come from not being drafted to dart throw territory. And then Alec Iomanner, I wasn't that into because he was kind of going a little bit higher. When I talked to you on the phone, you were kind of like, yeah. And but now he's fallen, and he had an awesome combine. So I'm back in on Iomanner. I want to get your thoughts on that group.
I suppose it's all cost of acquisition at that point now, isn't it? Yeah, he had an incredible combine. You cannot take that away from Alec Iomanner. However, I believe that's how it's pronounced.
Is that right? All right.
Iomanner.
I think I'm out. Yes. I think you just
now with the pronunciation. That's what I get it. But yeah, I mean, he had a good combine, but he's 6'1.5", 206. He's not 6'3".
Sure.
So he's not a big, physical, imposing specimen. So keep that in mind. With what I look at with him, and what kind of concerned me is, you look at the course of his season, and early on in the year, he was getting more targets. Had a couple big games, but outside of the big games, his consistency was not so great. He's somewhat inconsistent. And what really affected me was the last month, like the last 4 games. You saw Emmett Mosley, a true freshman over there at Stanford, just take over the room. Took it right over from Iomanor. Like it was almost like he needed a little time to get his feet wet. He's a true freshman. He's getting 2-3 targets a game, and it was making big plays until finally Troy Taylor over there said, "Okay, we're making the switch at quarterback." They had a couple of older type placeholders, and they made the move to Elijah Brown. He was a true freshman quarterback that I got to watch at the Elite 11, and I really liked him. He was also getting recruited to go to UCLA. He's a top 10 quarterback out of his class. They handed it over to Brown, and he pretty much, once he got in, they started going to Mosley. And Mosley, the 4 games he had of being the primary receiver blew away anything I saw from Io Manor all year. I know he had the big Travis Hunter game, which is nice. He caught lightning in the bottle, but just the consistency and the fact that he got full on taken over. I can't unsee what Emmett Mosley looked like directly across from him. And as he got phased out as the season went on, it concerns me. It greatly concerns me. Yep. Ran well, was in the low 4.4s. That's what we want to see. But at the end of the day, with the wide receiver position, you have to be that alpha. You have to be. Yeah. I want to see the guy that is the guy in his room. And the lack of yards after contact as well, not great. Sub 4 yards, actually yards after catch. Not what I'm looking at here. So I have my real concerns about Iomanor. I understand cost of acquisition, fine. But gosh, dude, I feel like guys like Besh, Jalen Noel, who you mentioned, the thing that gets me with Noel a little bit, I mean, what an amazing combine. Other than Matthew Golden, running the 4.29, but he didn't do any other tests. I mean, Noel did the full gamut. He ran them all, and he did them extremely well. He even threw up 23 bench press reps.
Damn.
Like, you kidding me? Like, all right, sounds good. The thing that concerns you with him is you put that athletic package out there on the track. You do 23 bench reps. Only 4 broken tackles last year and 4 broken tackles in 2023, each of the past 2 years. You think his play strength would translate a little bit better. That's what I mean. He knows. That's the real concern I have with him. And I mean, I love Higgins. I think that he's certainly worth being in that mix as, a late riser, a late sleeper. Thing is, Noel was better against zone, coming out of the slot, and Higgins was better against man coverage. I like his release package. So I am, in terms of the tier 3 guys, I like Jaden Higgins. I still think Trey Harris is right there. But I mean, I feel like Jack Besh, he has the ability to get open. Some guys just have that ability, and he's a little bit bigger. He's in that 210, 215 range. I like Besh. I can't help it. I think he's, when I'm looking at Iomanor, I think he's more in like a Besh type class.
Okay.
Than he is in the class of Higgins, Harris, and I'd probably even put Jalen Noel there. For a slot receiver, I love Restrepo. Restrepo was tough as nails over there in Miami. Going again, slot receiver, like a little bit on the thicker side, but ran great. Had a really good combine, and he's just tough. Some guys, it's hard to quantify, but I don't have any qualms about him running clean routes, being on the same page as the quarterback. His work ethic is, praised around the program as being like a self-made guy. I just like that sort of a profile when I'm looking at a potential sleeper type guy who maybe has a Jalen McMillan opportunity that kind of comes to pass. A round 4 wide out like J-Mac was coming out of Washington. He was a little depressed because he was hurt a little bit of the season, which allowed Jalen Pohl kind of to come out and be able to get drafted ahead of him, which is wild. But if there's a guy that I look at that has a slot profile that's a little bit sort of undervalued, I love Restrepo.
Nice. We've been taking a decent amount of him because the reports from him, I was thinking of him as like almost this year's Pearsall a little bit, where it's like the guy, he can get open, and he's like very reliable. Now he hasn't had, I don't think he's going first round like Pearsall did, but no one thought Pearsall was going first round this time of year either. And as a round 3 type of pick, Restrepo looks pretty interesting to me because it's like he would fall to round 3, not because he can't play, but because it's like, well, he's probably slot, and we don't see the biggest ceiling, but I think he can get out there right away.
Yeah, I mean, he's 210 pounds at 5'10". I mean, he's stocky and he runs well for that size. Yeah. I mean, that's the type of thing I want to look at, and obviously, just the overall route running savvy. You watch his defensive manipulation, like it's there. So I believe in him out of that next class, and I think you can probably throw Jalen Royals in there too.
Okay.
Yes, he tested real well. He showed his speed on tape. He's right down in the low 4.4s. And the way he was used at Utah State, he's fast. He's explosive.
Yeah, yeah.
Can he translate? Can he do it, coming from the Mountain West and go up against the NFL caliber corners? I'm not entirely sure. But I think that he certainly deserves a look down the board. And, you could also kind of probably say that about Torrey Horton. I think Torrey Horton out of Colorado State, his routes are better than Royals. Like he's
very productive. Torrey Horton,
it's extremely. But got hurt last year, which took a little theme out of his profile. But man, if you watch his tape and you watch how he runs, his breaks are real clean. He's creating good, solid separation. Is a good athletic profile, but not out of this world. But tested where he needed to be. So, for the two Mountain West guys, I do think Horton, that there's a world where he succeeds, and he's way down the board.
Tell me a little bit more about Besh, because he's a dude where like the statistical profile is really not that impressive, and I'm kind of like whatever. But then Senior Bowl, awesome Senior Bowl week, catches game-winning touchdown in the game. Great story. Seems to be someone that NFL teams are not sleeping on at all. And so I'm taking him. I'm kind of just like, well, sometimes it doesn't show up in the production profile. And if it's cheap enough, I'm willing to bet on the traits. But tell me a little bit about his traits.
He's got incredible hands. First off, like it hits his hands, it sticks like glue. That's what you want to see. He's a man. He did incredible against zone, and against man, he was definitely not as effective. Which you're not going to kind of expect him to be that because he's 6'1" and change, 214 pounds. That's really, the agility is not going to be really what he does. But man, I think in terms of his ball tracking, Pearsall is who I think of ball tracking wise. Like Pearsall made some incredible catches when he was called upon there in college. And with Besh, that's what you see out of him. Is just if it's around him, he has that sixth sense to be able to hone in and bring it in. He's got that kind of hands. Obviously not the freak athlete, but good testing considering he's 214. And he caught 13 of 19 contested balls, which is as good as you're going to see anybody in the class. I mean, that's absolutely a phenomenal rate. If you can make, and it goes to those vice grips that he has for hands. Like if you can do that when you're getting out there, you can make plays. I'd want to see more broken tackles from him. Obviously, like he was not a broken tackle guy, which certainly hurts his profile. Like what's his yak going to look like? Still, his yak was fine. The yards after catch was 5.5 yards, but the broken tackles are tough. So he's savvy. Route manipulation is right there. But not a premium athlete and has holes in his profile. That being said, so does Iomanor. Just because I feel like Beck was more just consistently productive and did things that the things that he does, the way he wins, I think he can translate there. Whereas I'm not sure about how Iomanor does.
Fair. Isaiah Bond, does he anything?
He's light. He's light. Yeah, man. I mean, he looked better in Alabama than he did at Texas, especially down the stretch. He had a not so great playoff performance. He had one drop that was right across the middle, hit him right in the hands, and he jumped when he didn't have to jump. One of those types of things. It's like a pet peeve I have about wide receivers, where the ball's there and you jump so that it comes into your chest, as opposed to just putting your hands up and grabbing it slightly above head level. And he pulled one of those and just looked awful. How light he is what concerns me. And his 40 time, he's expected to run in the low 4.3s, and he was in the 4.4s.
Yeah, Golden stole his 40 time.
Stole his entire. Yeah, we heard that it was going to be Jaden Blue. We heard it was going to be Isaiah Bond. Is going to be running in the 4.2s. No, it was Matthew Golden, and he was in the 4.4s for Bond, which had 180 pounds.
Especially if that's like your whole thing. I've been comparing him to the other Texas guy last year, to Tavion Sanders, the tight end, kind of a weird comp. But like last year, I was like, Tavion Sanders, he's a bet on draft capital and athleticism. And then it's like, well, he's not that athletic. So then the draft capital was not really there. It's just like 2 years ago, I guess, when he came out. But, or was it last year? I don't know. As we've said, I can't keep track of which year it is. But Bond is like, well, he's not that athletic now. So is he going to be a round 3 guy? Could he fall to day 3? I've had trouble getting excited.
Yeah. And against man coverage, he was one of the worst in the entire class. 0.52 yards per route against man coverage. Now, I know that the NFL is gearing more towards zone. Zone is what it is. But, dude, if you're getting stuck on like that in press man situations, it makes me wonder about your play strength, without a doubt. Sure. And he doesn't do contested catches. He's not strong enough to do that. He doesn't play with the kind of leverage you'd want him to. Really, if there's somebody who took a hit, he's taken a pretty considerable hit, because in C2C leagues last year, he was probably second round pick.
Damn.
And that's
Ollie Gordon and Isaiah Bonds. Start your draft with that. What could go wrong?
Yeah, exactly. Both of them were right there, first and second rounders. Yeah. If there's somebody, and he's a tier 4 guy for me, he's out of that third tier of the guys that we were just talking about. I've dropped him down. I have him behind Torrey Horton. I also have him behind Ty Felton for Maryland. I like Ty Felton. I think if we're looking at guys that could really surprise, I like Ty Felton from Maryland. He's a straight up sleeper type, but man, the more I watched him during the season, I just look at him and say, this guy has talent. Like, he's a fluid mover, bigger. He's not small. He's 6'1". He's a little light at 183, which you can certainly ding him for there. And I get it, but when he was targeted, when he was asked to make plays, he snaps off those breaks, and just as soon as he catches it, he's turning and he's heading upfield. Like, he's catching and running in one motion in a way that was pretty advanced for what you see at the college level. Did have an issue with like concentration drops to some extent. That's certainly the case, but for 6'1", 183, he broke 18 tackles, which is not something you expect from somebody with those sort of dimensions, as we sort of talked about with Isaiah Bond, where he wasn't breaking tackles. You look at what we got out of Felton. He's elusive, he's slick, and he has pretty good ball skills when he's going up to get it. He just has to avoid the concentration drops. So I feel like he's somebody who's kind of underrated, and he ran great too at the combine.
Yeah,
he ran fast, which you better.
And that's kind of a big part of his game. Yeah, you better be fast.
He ran fast. So that's somebody in my 4th tier that I feel like has potential. And if there's one more, I'd say like Elijah Badger for Florida. Man, I've been wanting to see the Elijah. I've been waiting to see what we get out of him.
I don't know that he's been drafted in these tournaments. His ADP
That's what I like
is a
to
flat
hear.
240. So I think he literally may not have been taken yet.
That's what I like. Nobody takes Elijah Badger. I like hearing that. He was Trey Wilson got hurt this year. Eugene Wilson, he will be back this year and will be in next year's class, probably maybe the one after. And Badger came over from Arizona State, where in 2023, he almost killed me on the sidelines against Washington. He caught a ball down the sideline. I was sitting there waiting with, my camera already, and he The closest I've come on a college field to getting run over and completely trucked was Elijah Badger. So I saw him bearing down on me, and he's a pretty rocked up dude. And I did not want to get hit by Elijah Badger when he was coming hot after me. But rocked up. I mean, really 6'1", 200 pounds is just looks great. Has over 32-inch arms, which I like. Wingspan wise, kind of giving him the ability to extend outside his frame and get balls. But his ADOT, 17 yards of ADOT.
That's a deep
one
ADOT.
Of the most
targeted
guys when it comes to downfield and winning. And if you look at what he did, 3 yards per route against man, 3.8 against zone, 2.9. Just as I love guys who beat man, who when they're trying to shut you down, when they're coming after you, they're putting them down. He smoked man coverage and 26 broken tackles.
Damn.
That's for real, guys. And it's because he's athletic and he's strong and he's twitchy. And I just feel like you look at that, didn't drop a single pass. He's solid. Only 39 receptions. He broke 26 tackles on 39 receptions.
That's
he had
crazy.
806 yards this year.
Wow.
He's doing it. And he had a rookie quarterback, DJ Lagway, a freshman, true freshman, coming out of there, Elite 11 runner-up. And he's working with him and dealing with all this stuff. So in difficult circumstances, Ford had the toughest schedule in the country that he's playing over there in the SEC. He's over there ripping defenses like that. He's breaking tackles. He's hitting long balls. He's winning in multiple facets. And he's strong. And he ran well. He was in the 4.4s for his 40. I was like, all of that I'm looking at going, Elijah Badger is a tier 4 guy for me who frankly could end up, elevating in the tier 3. I just think he's that premium kind of a player. And he's been drastically slept on at 240. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I've been worried about his draft capital, but that's exciting to mix in, especially you get to these, these tournaments have been going for a while, so you start to take guys no one else has even taken. He's not on any of the early teams, that had a little bit of different mixes of some of the veteran values and stuff. So
understood.
I like that one a lot.
That's how it is. That's how it is.
Let me ask you about
a little bit of a sleeper.
Real quick, Ja'Cory Brooks has probably the sickest catch that I've seen in this entire draft class. I saw it at Tyler Shuck highlights, where a guy he gets pass interference, spins around, still catches. I don't know how he knew where the ball was. Still, this beautiful catch along the sidelines. That's it. That's all I really know about him. But he doesn't really pop in my stuff. But pretty great catch.
Pretty great. Hey, you can do it. Alabama guy, right? Was a top 5 wide receiver recruit coming out of his class. Checks in at 6'2", 184. The 184, that's Felton territory. That's my boy Ty Felton. So if I'm in that range, that's my boy. Problem with Brooks is one, his feet. You're just watching him on tape, and I feel like he should be moving quicker for 184. With 6'2". I just feel like he should have more snap. Drops are a problem too. 10% drop rate. Only broke 1 tackle all year. And this is
wow.
You got 113 targets, and this is the Brom offense too over there. Like you said with Shuck, made David Blau into somebody, made Aiden O'Connell into somebody, made Tyler Shuck into somebody.
You're already ready to say that?
He made him into somebody. Made him into someone. Fair. But so he's out there, firing away, and Brooks can only get 1 broken tackle out of that. Look at David Bell, right? David Bell, who went on to the Cleveland Browns, he was breaking tackles left and right in that system. That was for Purdue. We're talking about Louisville. They're in the ACC. He goes from SEC, Alabama, down to Louisville. You can't break more than 1 tackle. You're dropping 10% of the throws coming your way. 42% contested catch rate. I don't know. I'm just
okay. Well,
I just can't. I'm not a Ja'Cory Brooks guy.
Okay.
It's no offense. Actually, no.
I'm gonna watch that catch really again, but I won't draft him. I won't draft him.
His contested catch rate was excellent. I made a mistake with that. It was actually 70%.
Okay.
But that's the thing is, it's his feet. It's his ability. he doesn't look
to create separation. Yeah,
to create separation and to be able to do that at the NFL level. I that's where my questions come in with Brooks.
Last thing is Travis Hunter a wide receiver or cornerback?
If he gets drafted by the Patriots, he's a wide receiver.
That's true.
Yeah, I think you better put him at wide receiver with the way that they're
getting a wide receiver.
Who else is catching passes? DeMario, and then who? Like that ragtag group of Kendrick Bournes, right?
Collins, baby.
Have they released him yet? He has to be released.
I don't even know.
I hope so. My God, it's just unacceptable. Yeah. So I mean, God, if he goes to the Patriots, I would love to see the Patriots go and say, "All right, you run 70% of your snaps at wide receiver. Move him around the formation, get it creative. He's incredible. He's the best wide receiver in the class, in my opinion. I think he's awesome.
I think he's awesome.
And then you throw him out there in passing situations, obvious passing downs for 30%. Go throw him in the slot, throw him outside, whatever. You got Christian Gonzalez there already. Fine. I would love to see the Patriots do that with him. I would love it. And if he does, he's going to produce, I think.
All right. That'll do it for this episode. Thanks for going a little long here with me.
Always
had to get in the it's not the wide receiver class it's been in recent years, but I think a pretty interesting one. And this running back class, we don't get one of these very often. So
plenty of sizzle. Yep.
Plenty of sizzle. But let the people know where they can check out more of your stuff.
Sure. I'll actually be coming out. I mentioned some of the tiers here, tier 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever it might be. I actually have my tiered rankings coming out early next week. I put them out earlier, but hey, I already put out a mock draft column that went through the entire early gambling slate. Put that out earlier this week. You can find me on CF Froton over there on the X machine when it's working.
When it's up.
When it's not getting cyber attacked, all right? But as long as that's up there, that's where I am over there. And if you are interested in wagering, there's some potential angles. Most of the early betting market just opened up this week. So I went through a lot of that, and
nice.
You can give you a pretty good idea, different angle on a mock draft, having all the gambling stuff involved so that you know what you're looking at for these potential picks. And maybe you go out and throw a little money down. What's wrong with that?
All right, check out all the rookie stuff that we got going on Legendary Upside. We're going to be doing some more rookie pods as well. Hoping to get pod going next week on the rookies. We'll lock that one in hopefully pretty soon. So appreciate your time once again, Froton. We'll see everybody again soon.
Hopefully I'll see you in San Diego soon.
Yeah,
you can get a haircut.
Bring the sun back with you.
We're both on it, buddy. Yeah, I like the hair. I like the flow coming, Kareem. Attaboy.
We got to get some softball in too.
You're damn right you do. At least you have to come and have some beers at the clubhouse afterwards. Bare minimum. We'll get you
bare minimum. All right. I'll see you there, man. Later, guys.
Later.